Hey, welcome back, you guys, to another episode of the JK Experience. Josh Galanowski and the sidekick. We did establish that, the sidekick, right?
I think so. I'll take that.
You liked it. I was
Sure.
not a big fan, but
I think we just need like superhero costumes now.
oh, there you go. People on the YouTube channel could check it out.
It's more of a visual
But
thing.
what would they do with if you didn't have your vest on? Is there a
I don't know.
superhero with a vest?
I don't know. Let's work on that. I'm Vest Man.
James Rivera, the vest man. All right, cool. Like it. I got to tell you, man, I love doing these in the afternoon. I just kind of told you this, but having so much more energy, it's amazing. Like when you get the workout in, when you get the day going, how much more energy you have. At least I have. So I'm so glad we're doing this in the afternoon today.
Listen, I'm just waiting for my boss to leave so I can go home.
I'll leave here in 10 minutes. All right. Hey, we thought we'd do something a little bit different, you guys. I'm always asking the question. I'm always kind of bringing the substance of like what we want to talk about that day. And I think it'd be awesome to hear from James. We're gonna do a little bit of a role reversal here. James is gonna head this one up, and then I'm gonna try to either defend it or I'm gonna try to give some explanation from my point of view, because I know you've got a lot of great things that you want to share with the audience here. So it is all you, brother. The stage is yours.
Wow, big shoes to fill there. So
big flip flops.
Yeah, big flip flops.
It's Flip Flop Friday.
Of course it is. So one of the things that became apparent as we were doing these podcasts is the fact that there are a lot of things that I'm learning as I develop as a leader.
Yeah.
And it's the questions that I'm asking you, but we never have the camera turned on when I'm asking them, or we never have the podcast on when I'm asking those questions. I said, hey, what a great opportunity to ask those questions that I'm experiencing, right? And have you answer those for people who may be going through those same things. So one of the things I thought of is in leadership or in management or in business ownership, you have people that you're mentoring and that you're leading and that you're hopefully inspiring.
Yeah.
And you're always giving. One of the things that we talk about is meeting them halfway, right? Or I'm sorry, meeting them where they're at. I misspoke there. Meeting them where they're at is one of our things that we definitely encourage. But then on the other side of that, we have this thing where we also know that it's okay to bless and release if things just aren't working out.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to decide the fine line there. Now we're not dealing with this currently, but it's just, I wonder how much do you give before you're like, okay, it's just not working, time to bless and release.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, and that is such a journey that we've been on prior to even when you became a part of our companies here. And I would say, that I really believe in this full circle way of learning is first you hit the knowledge, then you take that knowledge and you put it into action, which becomes your understanding. And then after you have some time to reflect on what happened and how you went through that process, you actually have the wisdom through it. So what I'm going to share is really more of like we've had some knowledge, we've experienced it, and now in reflection we can look at the wisdom of it. But we're back on the knowledge part of it again too, because we're even reaching longer and deeper levels of people being with us. So we're still constantly looking and evaluating. How do we meet them exactly where they're at? And, how many times do we give grace in that? But I would say right now, what we're at right now is that it just goes back to kind of in the Bible where Jesus is asked how many times you forgive somebody, and he says 7 times 7. And the analogy on that is that you can't say, you can't give forgiveness enough, right? So when it comes to how, your question is, how many times do you meet them where they're at? How many times do you, continue to pour into them? And I would say is you never stop pouring into them. What ends up happening is in that bless and release is more as they're coming to the realization that this isn't the direction they want to go, that this isn't where they want to be, that they want to choose, that they're choosing to take their life into some other corridor or with some other company. And that's when we bless and say, listen, we still love you and we wish the best for you. We want the best for you. And, I hope that we can continue to be friends when you do if you decide to leave us. Right. But as long as they're under our umbrella, as long as they're a part of our, what we call our, quote unquote family, we're not giving up on them. I mean, it's just like, would you ever give up on a brother or a sister or mom and dad or aunt? I mean, no, they're part of your family. As mad as you want to get with them or as frustrated as you want to get with them, you don't give up on them. And we know that like when they make that commitment to one of our companies, they've made that commitment to us. So I feel an obligation to make a commitment back to them. And one of our promises is that we will meet you where you're at. I think the problem that we run into and many leaders run into is that sometimes we feel like they're at this point in their life. In all actuality, they're actually at a much different area in their life. And so we have to make the adjustment. I think where we get frustrated is that we want them to meet us where we're at.
True.
And so if we got to constantly go back and ask the right questions and dive deeper into truly, what is impacting them and affecting them in order for us to really get to the core of their level of personal accountability or their level of maturity in their business and in themselves personally. Because as you could be in front of 5 people and give one message and all 5 of them are going to hear something completely different.
Yeah.
And that conversation that you're going to have with number 1 is going to be different from the one at number 5 because of where they're at in their lives, not where you're at in your life.
So true. And I got to tell you, I've seen this in action. And the reason I bring it up is it's a difficult thing, right? You give and give and give, and you get to a point, I mean, it's human nature. You're like, man, I don't have anything left. I just have nothing left. And again, as I've evolved as a leader, I've realized that there is no end, but I'm looking for, okay, how do we take it to the next level? If you're just done, you've run out of resources, so to speak.
Yeah.
How do you take it to the next level? And I think one of the things that you hit on, and maybe you can just expound on that, is, hey, you got to figure out where they're at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's step number 1.
Right. Well, and I think it's always an opportunity when you think of like, I've run out of resources, I've run out of the words to say. To me, I always look back on that. I always internalize that, going, okay, if I just ran out of things to say to help somebody else out, I am not learning enough, and I've got to find some resources for myself. I've got to bring either somebody else into that situation with me that I trust, that's going to know how to get to that next level, or I've got to start using my sphere and asking them, hey, listen, here's my challenge with, employee A or independent contractor A. How would you handle that situation? Like, give me some advice, because I'm not obviously fulfilling the commitment that I made to them and helping them get through this. Right.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's really important too, is that the messaging that you're constantly giving to your employees, independent contractors, people that you have influence over, is that you yourself are always growing. You yourself are always changing. You yourself are always at first challenging yourself to be better and to grow in those areas of your life. And you want them along for the ride too. You want to bring them along, but you're not going to allow them to slow you down either, though.
Yeah.
And when you set that precedence, what ends up happening is people are either going to get on that bus and understand too that you might not have them on the right seat yet, right? So it doesn't mean just because they're on the bus doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect and smooth sailing. But if they're going to be on the bus, they have to understand, like, you're going to continue to keep driving towards bigger goals.
Yeah.
If they're not on the bus, eventually what they're going to end up seeing is that this might not be the place that they want to be. And we say this every time that we interview either an employee or, once again, an independent contractor. We always tell them that if you really don't aspire to these core values, if you really don't want to embody the mission statement, if you really don't want to live a life and make a career like as such as what you've heard and what you've experienced, on a very small stage, working here, being here, it's like coals burning on your head if that's not truly the person that you want to become. Because we do create such an environment that we're constantly building each other up, challenging each other to do better things and bigger things, with the amount of support and with the grace that it takes to get there as well too, because you are going to fail, you're going to stumble, things do happen, but you want to know that you have a safety net there in order for you to meet those challenges and to really dive into things that are very uncomfortable, because change is not comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And we talk about that so much, is that they call it change for a reason. It's not like, anything that you want to do better for yourself. It's usually not easy. And we talked about this on an earlier podcast about that 75 hard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I personally know that I want to change some things in my life, and that's why I'm going to take on this challenge. But I know already I've identified some of the stumbling blocks that I know that I'm going to experience, and I'm doing everything I can to like either put people around me and circle me so that I can help get through that, or I'm doing things myself individually to make sure that when I do hit that stumbling block, then I've already got a reason and a purpose and a solution to avoid stumbling.
Yeah. You have a plan. So this was a huge light bulb moment for me when you conveyed this to me, and I want you to just kind of run with this because nobody puts it more eloquently than you do on this particular subject. But we talk about, like, in the early versions of this podcast, right? Mm-hmm. The only people were listening to this were the people editing it, right?
Yeah, right.
And now we've got people listening. So in the beginning, we weren't doing it for anybody else other than ourselves. And so you basically told me, hey, listen, when you're doing this, when you're continuing giving of yourself like that, you're just improving yourself as a leader, right? And like the light bulb came on, and I'm like, now I'm doing it more intentionally, right? Yeah. So talk more about that.
Yeah, this is something that we talked directly on the frustration, and many of you guys experience this that are listening to this. You're doing something. Let's say you're trying to you're teaching a class, or you're pouring into other people. You've put something in your life that you're just trying to give, right? You're as a leader, we do so much giving, but you're not either seeing the results from the people that you're trying to inspire. You're not seeing the numbers of the people that you want to inspire, right? And you're not getting to that level where you just feel like you're getting accomplished. And what you and I spoke about very particularly is because, and it's something that I had to go through too. I mean, I'm sharing with you a personal breakthrough that I had was just because I'm not seeing it doesn't mean that it's not happening. Just because I'm not seeing it doesn't mean that I should stop doing it. Mm-hmm. And I had to realize, this is the selfish part that I think as a leader, you've got to be really very protective of, is the reason why you're doing this also is so that you become a better leader. And so they always talk about, it takes 10,000 hours, 10,000 reps to become, exceptional in something, right? Mm-hmm. And this is part of your 10,000 reps. So if you're teaching a class and you're having one student show up, or you're having one independent contractor show up, it can be very deflating if your mindset is, I need to have every one of these seats filled. But if you go into that going, hey, this is an opportunity for me to make sure that I'm bringing valuable content. I got to do the research. I've got to have my systems in place. And who cares? You show up and you're like, fantastic. I got one person here that I can actually express this to. The ultimate reason why you think you want to think this way is because eventually you're going to have that opportunity, right? Eventually you're going to get into that stage or that presence or that meeting with that person that you wanted to get into, or the amount of people that you want to get into. And if this is the first time that you've tried to tackle that, the chances of you to succeed are very, very minimal, right? Yeah. So part of the 10,000 reps is to do it time and time and time and time and time again, regardless of who's paying attention. And that's like this podcast right here. I mean, honestly, I don't know how many people on the other end are listening to it. I could really care less, because what it's doing is it's allowing you and I to get our messaging on a more of a level, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just another conversation that we're having anyway, so we might as well record it.
You bet.
So and I love being able to do these recordings, because it also helps me articulate a lot of the things that I have inside, and I just don't know how to get them out there necessarily. And if you don't think that we're listening to these and improving these, then you're sadly mistaken, because we're constantly going back to say, that was stupid. Let's change this. Or, man, I didn't really sound very smart in that aspect, or my words got jumbled here. We are going to be better. Like, episode 150 is going to be different from episode 15, and episode 1,500 is going to be different too. And they're hopefully going to be better, because we're constantly looking at self-improving ourselves.
Doing those reps.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am proof positive of that example right there. So one last thing, and I want you to share this because I know you've experienced it. cite an experience where you've had been at your wit's end, at the end of your rope, and you've got like no more, you feel like you've got no more to give
Yeah.
with somebody in your companies, and tell me the outcome with that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's always a process. We always talk about, how do you fill your cup? Because, honestly, you guys, when you give and pour into so many people, it is draining emotionally, it's draining physically. And if you are not doing things on a daily basis, I'm promising you this, if you don't do things on a daily basis that are filling you, you are going to burn out and you're going to get real bitter. And I've seen it happen to so many leaders, and even myself, I've experienced it where I will get out of my disciplines that I know that really do empower me. And so anyway, so you've got to go back, you got to stay in those disciplines, right? So an experience that we did have, I really, about a year and a half ago, I had my come to Jesus meeting with somebody within our companies. And actually I do have, now thinking about it, I've had multiple come to Jesus meetings with people, but this one in particular was, we had been pouring into an individual for years and helping them change some things in their lives so that they would start to see improvements, and not only in their business, but also in themselves personally, like their personal integrity that we sometimes refer to, I should say. And it just was not sticking, and we'd be good for 6 months, and then something would uncharacteristically bad would happen, and then another episode would happen. And unfortunately at that time it was starting to affect other leaders in the organization and even other independent contractors as well too.
Sure.
So when it becomes that situation, that bless and release might have to come from us, right? And that's really what happened, is that I had to have a conversation with this individual about a bless and release, and saying, listen, we love you, we'll always love you, but this might not be the place for you, because obviously the core values we talk about, you're not fulfilling them. Obviously the mission statement that you profess and say, you are not embodying it. And when people get to that point, that bless and release, hopefully what you should have done by then is to have a good enough relationship with them where you can be, brutally, truthfully, and lovingly honest with them to say, you know what, all of these things that we do on a daily basis that we really truly inspired to do and to become, obviously you are not taking that very serious, and this might not be the place, and we need to either change something dramatically and immediately, or we're going to shake your hand, we're going to help you pack, and we're going to wish you the best in your life.
You got it.
Yeah. And it was a hard conversation. But I will tell you this, it was a life-changing conversation for that individual. And, I basically said, you need to think about this tonight. You need to think about what you're willing to change, because right now something is going to, it will change regardless whether you make the decision to do it or not. Something's going to change. And I tell you what, that individual made a decision, slept on it, prayed on it, and I'm sure cried on it, but came back with an amazing different attitude, and had a lot of humility to come back and to apologize, make things right with people. And once again, that was a year and a half ago, and the results have been amazing since. But you do have to put your foot down, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to you don't want to destroy everything as a company owner, as a leader, as a manager. You got to be very conscious of those things, because you don't want to destroy everything that you've built and sacrificed for, because you're not willing to have a hard conversation with somebody and really put your foot down and say, no, besides my personal feelings, at the end of the day, it's about the people that have entrusted us to provide them with the culture and the surroundings that we said that we would. And right now you are destroying that.
Yeah.
You just can't have it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That's a tough one, but I'm glad hopefully somebody gets to learn from that experience and maybe have that hard conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you what, there's so many people out there running organizations, managing organizations, and you just got to have the courage to do that. And I think that's the hard thing. That's an area of my life that I've had to grow, and I continue to grow, because there are times that I just don't have the courage to just have the hard conversation. And I've identified that. I get it now, but it's also something that I'm just I'm going to improve that area in my life. And will I go to be, a level 10 exceptional part of it overnight? Absolutely not. But I will tell you that every hard conversation that I have with people and with people that have entrusted their careers with our companies. Every time I have that, it gets me one more step closer and confident to have my words correctly and to articulate the value that we want to hold them to and that we want to hold ourselves to. It also helps me become the leader that I desire to be, one step at a time.
Yeah. So all true statements. That's great. So you know what? For some reason, I start asking the questions. We run long.
Yay!
I don't get
it, dude. I love it. Well, it's funny. That's how things go when you have something good to talk about. I think for sure, at least. So, all right. Well, hey, it is 21 minutes into this, so we're gonna wrap this up for you guys here. But hey, James, that was awesome. We're gonna do this again. I really do like how you can put me on the spot here and ask some, hopefully some really hard hard topics, because we want people to understand, like, leadership is hard.
It is.
And I think the misconception sometimes that we think about is that leadership should be easy, that it's natural, and that only a few people are called to do it. And I would say that many are called to do it. Few choose to do it, but many are called to do it. But it is a constant learning in your life that will allow you to become the person that you desire to be. So
you got it.
All right, guys. Hey, listen, we're going to wrap this up. We always appreciate you for listening, and can't wait for the next episode.